Hello and welcome to Good Game, the show for gamers by gamers. I'm Bajo.
And I'm Hex. Coming up on the show, Need for Speed is back with Shift 2 Unleashed. But just how unleashed is it?
It's definitely less leashed than the last one. Plus, we've gathered up some 3DS launch titles for a mini scoreathon.
And we take a look at gamification, what happens when you apply gameplay to the real world.
But first, can you guess the game for this week?
Bajo, I thought we could give away another special prize this week. It's Jack Nicklaus Golf for the Super Nintendo.
Certainly has a nice yellow tinge to it.
Yes, it does.
And that means it's classic. I'll go read the news.
Smells a bit.
Good game.
Sony Online Entertainment has cancelled any further development of its spy MMO, The Agency. The cancellation comes as part of widespread studio closures and layoffs within Sony's online division, with 3 studios in Denver, Seattle, and Tucson being closed and 205 positions made redundant. The upcoming Sydney-developed LA Noire has become the first video game to receive an official selection for the Tribeca Film Festival.
Well, the last time I didn't kill my wife.
Rockstar will be presenting a preview of the open-world crime game, followed by a question and answer session at the prestigious event held in late April.
It's time to tell me what really happened.
Tribeca creative director Jeff Gilmore said of the game's inclusion, it's an invention of a new realm of storytelling that is part cinema, part gaming, and a whole new realm of narrative expression.
You either get yourself squared away or hand in your goddamn badge.
Robin Antonick, a programmer on the Apple II, Commodore 64, and MS-DOS versions of John Madden Football, is suing EA Sports for 20 years' worth of unpaid royalties. Antonick is claiming that technologies he invented in the early 80s have been used in subsequent versions of the game, and that his 1986 contract guaranteed him royalties should derivative works be made for other formats. EA claims that the series was purposely made more arcade-like to avoid using Antonick's work in any of the sequels. A fan-made Streets of Rage remake has finally been released as freeware for PC after 8 years in development. The team at Bomber Games rebuilt the Mega Drive game from scratch using all new code that mimicked the original, enhancing the game with new cutscenes, 19 playable characters, remixed music, and 103 stages. Unfortunately, a planned online mode had to be scrapped.
Good game.
As much as I liked Splinter Cell Conviction, Hex, Chaos Theory is still the pinnacle of the series in my opinion. There was a crummy DS port, so I was hoping the 3DS version would somewhat redeem that, and in some ways it's better, but in other ways it's even worse.
Yes, Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell 3D is pretty stripped down, isn't it? There's no co-op or multiplayer in this 3DS version, and all you really get is the basic campaign.
Yeah, there's not much in the way of new stuff. There is a hacking mini-game, and they've used that projecting mission objectives on the wall idea from Conviction, but that's about it. Being in 3D gives the world a good sense of depth, but the graphics won't blow you away. Everything is just a bit dark and dull.
Lost contact.
With the mega reflective 3DS screen, the darkness here makes it quite hard to play this game in a room that has any lights in it.
Controls work well enough with the circle pad used for movement and the face buttons used to control the camera. It's a bit clunky, but it works, and all of your weapons and gadgets are easily controlled with the touchscreen.
The AI is pretty weak, and that really hurts a stealth game more than anything else, I think. It's a fairly lengthy game, but with no co-op or multiplayer, I'm giving it 6 out of 10 rubber chickens.
This is the only third-person action game in the 3DS's launch lineup, and so it fills that gap, I guess, but it just feels like a lazy launch title, and it really is just a bare-bones 3D remake, so I'm giving it 5.
Next up, Ghost Recon Shadow Wars, which comes to us from the original designer of the XCOM series. If you're familiar with games like Advanced Wars, Fire Emblem, or Valkyria Chronicles, then this will be quite familiar to you.
Yeah, I guess you'd call it a top-down, turn-based strategy RPG. Basically, you command a team of ghosts around small maps and complete various objectives, which usually involves wiping out the enemy.
The story here is about some Russian politicians' plan to become president and start a war. It's typical Clancy geopolitical white noise, really. But I didn't mind, and it gives you an idea of what you're doing and why you're doing it, and that was enough for me.
And your team is made up of the typical classes. There's your soldier, medic, support, recon, sniper, and engineer, and each of them has a unique set of abilities. For example, your support unit can do the most damage when returning fire, while your engineer can deploy turrets. Some missions will force you to choose only a small team of ghosts, while others may give you extra units in the battlefield.
You really need to use their abilities wisely if you want to win. You also have to use line of sight and cover well too. Putting units behind a tree or in a building or giving them the high ground gives you a much needed advantage.
And there's lots of little tactical things to think about, and it could all be quite daunting if it weren't for the perfect learning curve. Even many hours in, the game is still teaching you all of the mechanics. It wasn't until about the 10th mission that they introduced command points, which let you use special abilities like airstrikes or let you move a unit again.
It's quite a long game. We're at about 15 hours, but apparently it's almost 40.
And it's quite a challenge as well. If one of your ghosts loses all of their health, then that's it, mission over. So you have to be really careful not to leave your units anywhere stupid. Battles can be quite long, often taking 30 minutes or more, but thankfully you can save your game during your turn and then reload it if you fail.
Completing objectives earns you stars, which you use to level up your ghosts, giving them extra HP and better weapons. They all have a preset skill tree though, so it's less about how you level them up and more about who you want to level up.
Multiplayer was a bit disappointing. It simply puts two generic armies against each other, which isn't too bad, but there's no online or Wi-Fi. It's all done locally, where you take turns on one 3DS. And there's skirmish maps, which are individual battles, which are great if you just want a quick fight. It all adds up to give you lots to do, and as you play through the campaign, you'll unlock multiplayer and skirmish maps.
Playing missions on harder difficulties, you earn more game score, and this goes towards your Pegg score and completion percentage. I really enjoyed playing this on Elite. It forces you to think about your tactics so much more.
We found ourselves turning off the 3D effect in a lot of these 3DS games because it does tend to strain the eyes after a long session, but I actually found myself leaving it on here. It's not used in any significant way to the gameplay, but it's a great effect and the whole world is like a little diorama you're looking into. And I think it helps that it's all quite slow paced as well. There's not a lot going on screen that's going to stress your eyes out.
These are my favourite kind of games for the DS Hex, this tactical turn-based strategy. It's a sort of game that you'll take to the toilet with you because you just can't put it down. They're so ferociously addictive. And I think this is the best 3DS launch title, so I'm giving it 8.5 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Well, it certainly feels like the game that shows what the 3DS is all about. It looks great in 3D, it plays great, and there's just hours and hours worth of gameplay to whittle away your time with, so I'm giving it 8.5 as well.
If you'd like to see more 3DS reviews, this weekend over on ABC3 on Good Game Spawn Point, we're also looking at Super Street Fighter 4 3D, as well as Nintendogs and Cats.
I've been keeping this in my boot so that I can swing my leg occasionally and get the pedometer going, get my steps up, win some dog biscuits, sell them at the shop.
Nice.
And then one day I can afford a cat. So,
Sick one.
heaps of fun.
Can I help? I'll
No.
help. Give it to me.
Absolutely not.
Good game.
A little bit of indulgence coming up next. When we heard that Nick Frost and Simon Pegg were in the country to promote their latest film, we thought, could Good Game, a show all about gaming, really justify an interview with them? Well, with nerd credentials like theirs, not really, but we went anyway.
Player 2 has entered the game.
When you got work.
Player 2 has left the game.
You guys obviously are influenced by a lot of nerdy culture and that sort of thing. Are games influencing you in any sort of way?
The video game industry outsells the film industry by 3 times. It's a massive empire. And filmmakers, or rather producers, marketing people who covet brand recognition will think, oh, we should make a game of Resident Evil because it sells.
That's a good idea.
What? It doesn't necessarily make a good film.
I mean, look at the Attic Attack movie. What happened to it?
Yeah, I'd like to have
Nothing.
seen Manic Miner.
Saberwolf, a good film, but a better game.
Games are games, you know, and are a genre in themselves and should not necessarily have to become films.
Could I ask you, if I may, are you guys much gamers at all? Do you play in your own time?
I've had a kid now, see, so I don't really have time.
At that time, we stayed up all night drinking apple schnapps and playing Tekken 2.
When was that?
That was 5 years ago.
I go through stages.
Yeah.
You know, I won't pick up the PS3 control for 6 or so months, and then I'll go out and I'll buy a couple of new titles, and then hammer it for a couple of weeks, and then get it out of my system and move on.
Hey man, listen. All top left. I was gonna say, reload. I'm on it. Since. Oh, sorry, shot. Thanks.
If Paul were to go back to his planet and show a part of human culture, do you think there'd be a game that he would take back with him that would be a good description of our universe?
Oh, Bioshock 2, definitely.
Or Kaplunk. I mean, I know it's not a computer game, but
Should be.
yeah. Imagine the Kaplunk movie. Like Tower and Inferno, wouldn't it?
It's a bit shorter.
That'd be quite weird.
With marbles.
Well, thank you very much for talking to us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And congrats on the film.
Thank you so much.
Cheers. Thank you. Such a pleasure.
Thank you. Cheers, man.
Good game.
Question for you to be asked. Well, it's time for some more Question Goodness Badge. Let's start with this one from Luke in Rockhampton, Queensland. Hi, when is True Crime Hong Kong coming out in Australia?
Basically, Luke, the answer is sadly never. True Crime Hong Kong was cancelled by Activision the same time they pulled the plug on the Guitar Hero and DJ Hero series.
Yeah, so I wouldn't exactly hold your breath on that one. All right, now moving on to this one from Joseph in Adelaide, South Australia.
I'm trying to get that trophy in Bulletstorm where you need to do an echo without getting any skill shots. I always manage to get a gag reflex or something by accident. Was wondering if you could give me some tips on an easy way to get it. Well, Joseph, that one's pretty easy. Just go for it on the downtown echo and simply run to the end without shooting anyone. Bam, trophy and/or Chivo unlocked.
Well,
Free Chivo.
that was pretty quick, which means we've got time to show another Chivo. How about Chop Chopper? To get it, just choose the Park Echo and pick the sniper rifle as one of your weapons. Wait for the chopper to be almost directly in front of you and for the target to go red, fire, and then just guide that bullet home.
Right, we've got one more question, and this one is from God in Mildura, Victoria.
God?
Are there any good God games coming out soon? Seems fewer and fewer these days. Well, God, I think there's one thing that'll be right up your alley. It's called From Dust, and it's being made for PC, XBLA, and PSN by veteran games developer Eric Chahi, who is responsible for the classic Another World. Such a great game.
In it-
Those polygons and that intro with the lift. Electricity happens and then...
In it, your goal is to protect some island inhabitants from nature by controlling nature. So you control a sphere which can copy types of terrain and then paste them somewhere else. So, for example, you can put lots of sand somewhere to change the flow of a river or plant some trees to stop a beach from eroding. It all looks stunning.
And also there's the upcoming dictatorial city building of Tropico 4 for PC and 360, which lets you create your own tropical dictator's paradise. And that's all the time we have for this week. See you later.
Good game.
Imagine a world where the stuff we love about video games ends up in everyday boring activities like brushing your teeth or doing the dishes. It's called gamification, and it's bringing gaming to real-life experiences.
Gamification is a process that uses game thinking and game mechanics to engage audiences and solve problems. If you're 36 years old like I am, we're at the leading edge of 3 generations of people who've been playing games at home. Games have been part of our entertainment lifestyle. And so we just think of problems in a gamified way now, as somebody who's played games their whole life, which is different for people who are older. Game mechanics are actually the tools that game developers use to make games. Gamification is the process that wraps up game mechanics for some business objective.
It's looking at the true game dynamics of what actually taps into the intrinsic motivations of people. What is it that makes them love a game? Bring that out in whatever product or service you're developing. You're far better developing a much more engaging product or service.
We all have these fundamental human needs and desires for reward, status, achievement, competition, self-expression, even altruism. Yet you look at most sites, experiences today, and how do they address or leverage those fundamental human needs? And for the most part, they're not. They're completely ignoring them. People are hungry for those things, and so if you can give that to them, if you can satisfy those human needs and integrate it into your content, your community, your online app, then you can drive incredibly valuable behavior amongst your users and influence, incent, and motivate them to do the things that you want.
The biggest difference between gamification and game design is that game design is about a narrative experience. It is about entertainment. And gamification is about non-fiction gaming. It's about taking those game elements and game mechanics, the things that make games compelling, and bringing them to all kinds of aspects of our lives that today, frankly, aren't that interesting.
You win.
When we look at the actual mechanics of games that are interesting, we've identified 6 or 7 that are probably really important for people doing gamification. So you're mostly concerned with points, badges, levels, challenges, leaderboards, rewards, and onboarding.
Part of our motivation system is that we like to compete, we like to accumulate points, we like status. So if you sort of earn some points and badges and there's a leaderboard on the website that you're engaging with on a product or service, it starts to make you feel more engaged.
Levels work incredibly well. Levels are frequent flyer programs, they're belts in karate, they're job titles. They're this idea that I reached this milestone, this level of accomplishment in a community, and should be afforded a certain amount of respect and status for having done so.
Badges have been the most lean forward type of game mechanic that we've seen, particularly like in Foursquare, for example. Badges.
My name's Andrew. I'm not a gamer, but I am addicted to Foursquare. Foursquare is a social networking application where you basically check in, earn points, and unlock badges. And there's a leader table that Foursquare checks for you. I get to see if my friends are around the corner and I don't know about it, and they also get to see where I am at any given point in time. The badges in Foursquare are, I guess, designed to sort of keep you going with the social experiment. In the early days, you're encouraged to make as many check-ins as possible and earn your stripes. But then as you get more involved, the badges become harder to obtain and a bit more rewarding, I guess, when they're obtained.
Although points, badges, and leaderboards are important to gamifying an experience, the movement is still in early days.
There's a lot of skepticism, and as there should be, and it's like, particularly from the gaming community, because it's like, well, life isn't a game because we have a lot more control, we have a lot more to do in a game than just to walk into a shop or stay at work.
Well, one of the biggest challenges has been, whenever fun is no longer the principal objective of a gamified exercise, you tend to lose some important piece of the fidelity. And my favorite thought example is the educational gaming market. There is this game called Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? And it was, for all intents and purposes, the last big hit in the educational software business. That was 1987. So what happened? Parents and teachers got involved. They shifted the focus of design from what's compelling, engaging, and fun for kids to what parents and teachers would buy. And that immediately meant that the games were no longer fun, they were work. So in the meantime, though, games like SimCity and Civilization have taught hundreds of millions of people some really basic things about how society functions and the history of the world. So one of the things that I challenge everybody that I work with on gamification to do is I challenge them to take a big step back and say, can we produce an experience that is fun first, purpose second? Not purpose first, fun second. Anytime you do that, you get mediocrity.
The caveat there is that you add game mechanics to a shallow experience and they can create a huge, tremendous lift, but they cannot keep people there. If you have a news site without fresh news every day, it doesn't matter how many game mechanics you have, nobody's going to come back, right? Your core content and the experience needs to be good.
I think there's going to be leaderboard fatigue or badge fatigue at some point if everyone's going to do it and everyone's going to go, oh, ho-hum. At the moment, we're just scratching the surface. We're just taking the easy entry-level aspects of what a game mechanic is. But if you go into the deep dynamics of what makes a true, excellent, wonderful game, it's its narrative and its gameplay, that's where it will head eventually.
I really had to work at it.
So will gamification ultimately make life a lot more fun and engaging in the future?
Research that came out at the Gamification Summit identified that the gamification industry, just it itself, would be $1 billion market by 2014. The truth is, a very small minority of experiences in the world have any degree of gamification in them whatsoever. We are just at the beginning. We will increasingly see gamification in every aspect of our lives, but focused on probably 3 or 4 big categories. And the biggest effects are going to be seen in marketing and advertising. They're going to be seen in healthcare, they're going to be seen in education, and they're going to be seen in finance. And so the challenge is for designers to continue to innovate. One of the biggest commitments you have to make is you're designing experiences over time. You have a long-term commitment to your user to build a system of fun and engagement, leveraging gamification, and that may be for the rest of their lives.
Last year we got the near-perfect arcade racer Need for Speed Hot Pursuit, but the franchise also wants to appeal to the sim racer, and that's where Shift 2 Unleashed comes in. But is it simulation or just simulated simulation?
So you're the driver everyone's been talking about.
The first shift was high-speed, white-knuckled racing, and as much as we liked it, we ended up spending more time with Forza 3 in the long run because, well, that was a game based more around controlled racing rather than insane fear. And while this sequel will still stress you out, you now have more control over your vehicle at high speeds, which is a welcome tweak.
One thing they haven't tweaked, though, are the rear-wheel drive vehicles. I just find more than any other racer, they're so hard to control in this game. There are exceptions, but, I mean, you could spend, half an hour tuning the crap out of a rear-wheel drive, or just get a front-wheel drive or a four-wheel drive and use that. Still, there are plenty of cars to keep you happy here. Slightly Mad Studios have overhauled the tuning options too with Shift 2 to produce a much more customizable racer, and that part of the sim side they really got right, I think, Hex. There's enough details on what your tuning will do, and I think even if you're not a car enthusiast, you'll find some tweaking here useful. You can also tune your vehicle for specific tracks, which I thought was excellent. The presentation of the game overall I quite liked, Hex, especially how the whole main menu is based around a car crash.
Yeah, the menus are all set out really well, although it can get a little bit laggy waiting for your game to save. And we did encounter a few glitches, like one that took your HUD away and wouldn't put it back. And this one which wouldn't reset the car at all, which gets really awkward if you crash or flip.
The crowd doesn't seem to mind, though. Hello.
As you earn cash in career mode, you can upgrade your vehicle and push its performance index so high that it can even race in the next class.
Your standard assists are there, and it's worth experimenting with them and the difficulty to find that kind of style that you like to race in. For example, you might actually race better with a lot of the assists off and an easier difficulty setting. This game rewards you for being a cautious driver. One little knock or bump from another car can mean ultimate loss of control and both of you spinning out. On the other hand, the AI doesn't seem to reset, so it pays to fight a little dirty.
I thought the AI was really good here. In fact, I think it's the best AI I've seen in a racing game with only a few WTF moments. You notice cars avoiding you and reacting to erratic behaviour. In fact, if you get into first place early on, you can keep the position simply by stressing out the cars behind you. Lose first or second place though, and getting it back is very hard. Often they'll just take off and gain too much ground.
I would have liked to have seen the AI stuff up just a little bit more, but it is a thrilling fight for those first 3 positions. And, there are a few games, Hex, that make me sit on my edge of my couch and move the controller like a mad noob, but this is one of them.
Yeah. As you drive, you'll gain XP to unlock new races, and with each level comes cash and sometimes vehicle rewards. There's your standard races, eliminators, muscle cars, plus some wonderful retro races thrown in with cars from the 80s. There are also drift events, which take a little while to get used to, but they are rewarding. It's a whole other game, really. As tempting as it is to keep finagling that steering stick, you're only getting it through if you just do slight adjustments as you spin around the corners. I like that the commentary gives you little tips on each race, and each time you enter a new mode, the new drivers you meet will tease you with awesome cars.
So come on, let's see if you got what it takes to win big with American muscle.
We reviewed this on PS3, 360 and PC, and we've tried it with a high-end racing wheel on the PC version as well. Shift 2 has elements of a sim racer, but it's certainly not up there with the likes of R-Factor or iRacing. Here they've aimed for somewhere in the middle, so it feels like a sim, but it's not as punishing. And it's not really a criticism, because for me that's totally fine. I don't have a $500 wheel in my house, but I think if you go into this expecting a sim experience, then it's just not going to cut the mustard.
There are some beautiful production values here, but yeah, it falls short of a true sim, and there are some force feedback issues here which we can only hope get patched.
You can also really put your foot down when you're coming out of a corner, and the tyres will grip and take off, and if it were a true sim, you shouldn't be able to do that without any consequences. It's the little things, Hex. Actually, these are quite big things.
Yeah, I thought the helmet cam was a nice addition though, even though it takes a little bit of getting used to. I quite liked it, but I found it more fun to watch than to actually drive in that mode myself. I liked how it gives you a literal heads up for each turn. There are some gamers who will of course swear by it, so it's good that it's an option. And the cockpits do look great, but Bajo, we need to talk about the absolute best part of this game, the utterly addictive autolog, that evil stat tracking system from Hot Pursuit that pits you against your friends list in everything you do in the game.
I'm so glad autolog is back to ruin my life and my ego and make me feel like a crap racer. There's always someone on your friends list that's better than you, but having said that, there's always someone who's worse as well.
Why are you looking at me?
It also displays the regional and world record for that track, although some of the world records are total bullshit, Hex. I saw one which was about 3 seconds, so I think they're bugging out a little bit.
Or it's Time Lord.
Yeah.
Your race times don't appear to list which assists were used, but they do state your performance index, which is a figure based on your car and upgrades. This means that you'll feel better if someone is slogging you with a higher index, and much worse if they're beating you with a lower one. It really pays to max out your car to be competitive in Autolog. There are a variety of online modes, but the standard races are more fun, and never before has online racing been so stressful. One little bump and more than likely both drivers will spin out and fall very far behind. The game does seem to try to arcade spin you back onto the track, which actually bugged me. But it is wonderful psyching other drivers out, and you'll get psyched out just as much in return.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, come on guys, let's drive safe.
Come on.
Come on guys. So many times I'd be just too excited about overtaking someone though, and I'd just be going too fast and not see the red line and... It's super stressful, but I also found it has some pretty big issues. It might have just been launch lag blues, but I found that many times your screen actually doesn't sync up with what's happening on others. For example, I'd cruise past someone, but on their screen, I'd actually hit them, sending them into a spin, but on mine, nothing, smooth corner. And sometimes you'd be right behind another player, and just by being close to the back of their car, it would make them crash or spin out, even though you never hit them.
Yeah, that's pretty bad. I also noticed that no one's pings were out of the red for some reason, which makes us think that it's a connectivity issue, and surely that should be fixed. Although at least none of it felt laggy. Final thoughts?
I think if you go into this thinking that you're going to have a sim-like experience, you won't have a very good time. But go in expecting an exciting arcadey racer with sim-like elements, and you'll have a good time. And I think I liked it more than the first game, Hex, so I'm giving it 8.5 out of 10 rubber chickens.
It really bugged me that you can just unlock the whole career with real-life money. I mean, you have to earn the right to drive. Damn the man. You get the vibe that Shift 2 isn't trying to be Forza or GT with their giant collection of vehicles and slow calculated racing, and here you can afford to be a little bit more aggressive on the straights, and with those high speeds and nitrous going, you can't help but get your blood pumping, so I'm giving it 8 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Good game.
So did you guess the game for this week? It was Need for Speed 2 on PC from 1997, most memorable for its Australian circuit that showcased all the very best our country has to offer. Lots of red dirt and something we think is meant to be the Harbour Bridge.
If you would like to be in the running to receive this wonderful Super Nintendo game, Jack Nicklaus Golf, all you have to do is jump on the Good Game forums or the Facebook page, or tweet with the hashtag GGTV and plead your case.
Next week on the show, we'll be highlighting the very best responses from our fanboys versus haters debate on the Final Fantasy games.
We'll also be looking at a new adventure from the creator of the Gabriel Knight series, Grey Matter.
That's a great bed. Too bad it was just for one night.
Some muscles will be crunched in WWE All-Stars, and we'll round up some interesting downloadable games.
So until then, gamers, may all your controllers never run out of charge. Bajo out.
Checks out.
When I golf, I pull this face.